All right, let's get going on the week 13 recap. This is going to be another short one. I think this will be under 60 minutes. I don't plan on committing much time to this. Headline will once again be playoff picture review, and we did have some developments this past week, obviously. Four teams end up clinching a playoff spot. Nothdurft was already in. He had clinched a bye. Now he has solidified himself as the one seed. Nothdurft has been the best team all year. He's ended up where he deserves to be as the one. And then the four teams that joined him in the playoffs this past week, me, Krieger, Larar, and Peter. And really, to me, um, those have been the next four best teams for the majority of the season. So again, I think you look at it, and the five teams that have clinched deserve to be here. They have pretty steadily been playoff caliber teams. Krieger got off to that tough start, but since the trade that him and I made, he's been really good. Since the trade that Krieger and I made, we've both been top three scoring teams in the league. I've been number one, he's been number three. That's since week four of the season. Nothdurft, of course, second best during that time. Um, and Krieger and I now are really kind of duking it out for the second bye week, and that's going to come down to how things play out this week. Larar and Peter are both still alive for it as well, but their path is it's going to be a little bit difficult for them to get there, but it is still possible. And then, of course, the very interesting thing heading into this last week is that we do still have one playoff spot unclaimed. Andrew is currently sitting there. He came away with the big 1-1 week, whereas Mecca and Colin were both 0-2, and so that creates just a little bit of separation for Andrew. But hey, don't forget about Sam. It's incredible that he's doing this once again. Has himself alive after seemingly being dead. Um, Sam was 4-12. He was 5-13, and here we are. He's 6-2 over the last 4 weeks. To give himself a shot, it's going to be difficult. But if he could go 2-0, Andrew goes 0-2, some other things happen. There is a realistic opportunity for him to sneak in. Um, really, what it comes down to for Andrew is if he could just go 1-1 and hold off Mecca in season long points, which he's currently up by about 40, I believe. If Andrew can just simply do that, go 1-1, he's going to have a pretty good shot of making it. And that's why when you look at the ESPN math, they're giving him a 64% chance. So two-thirds of the time, Andrew's going to end up making it, but you never know what could happen. All it really will take for him is to have a down week, right? You score 90, 95 points, that opens the door for somebody else to get in. So quite a bit of intrigue there as we head into the final week uh, with the one playoff spot still up for grabs. We'll shift now into the week 13 matchup breakdown. Where do we want to lead off with? I think we go with that Sam Andrew matchup because it featured two of the highest scoring teams of the week, including Sam, who was the highest scoring in his uh, kind of resounding victory over Andrew to keep his season alive, 143.27 to 127.58. And the matchup MVP here is also the start of the week. It's Tua Tagovailoa, 28.85. A week after he was the worst sit, Sam gets him in the lineup and it pays dividends. All of those Miami guys performed on Thanksgiving night. It was looking pretty iffy in the first half, but then they got going. And Achan ends up with another receiving touchdown. Tyreek Hill had a touchdown off a deflection. Um, things really went well for Sam on Thursday as a whole, right? It was 7 of his 9 starting spots went on Thursday. Sam ends up with over 100 points. I mean, I can't really remember many times that that's ever happened in league history. Someone ending up with, over 100 points on Thanksgiving. It might be the first time that it has ever happened. But all those guys scored, right? Achan, Rico Dowdle, Tyreek Hill, Sam Laporta, all into the end zone. In Laporta's case, it was 2 times. Christian Watson's the only one who didn't, and he had a shot late. Jordan Love took a deep shot for him very late in that game, and very, it would have been incredible for all of those guys to score. But Sam basically had the matchup. He pretty much had it won on Thursday night. It was very deflating for Andrew, and it continued for Sam with the 2 other spots that he had. Mike Evans had a strong game as I was going to say, as he's seemingly fully healthy now. And here I see he didn't practice on Wednesday. Um, hopefully it's just kind of a rest day for him, but you don't like to see that he's sitting out for the same hamstring, and now they're adding a calf issue as well. Thursday will kind of indicate whether that was just a rest day or if it's a legitimate concern for him. Broncos defense got fucking torched by Jameis Winston, but for fantasy purposes, they had 2 pick sixes. That's 16 points. They end up with 13.72 for the night. So outside of those 2 pick sixes, they had negative scoring. But, Jameis giveth and taketh, and he gave a couple there to allow Sam to be the highest scoring team this week. I believe he needed both of them to finish ahead of Larar. No, it's not true. He only needed one. Only needed the one, but still. Uh, this was just a really good week for this team, and it's starting to get rolling. And really what it comes down to is, you built your team kind of on the back of the Miami Dolphins. They were dead for a while. The team was struggling. They're alive and well. And now the team, team shit is once again alive. So I really think that's all there is to say. The Godwin loss, of course, unfortunate too, but you start to look at it. Sam has kind of replaced Godwin with some of the performances he's gotten out of Christian Watson and Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy, who Sam did not start this week, was insane. Since Jameis Winston became their quarterback, Jeudy, I believe, leads the NFL in receiving. He's now top 5 in the league in receiving for the year, which is insane. Like Jerry Jeudy, who has long been just a massive disappointment in the NFL, has found something with Jameis Winston and is a really nice piece to own for fantasy at this point. Everything is kind of clicking for Sam, and we'll see if he can put together another 2-0 week and give himself a shot at sneaking into the playoffs. It would be pretty incredible, but nonetheless, good for him for the ride he's been on over the last month, bringing his team back to the level that we knew it was capable of at full strength. Andrew loses, but the big story is that he did come away with the league median second matchup win. I think that's the most important thing here. You ran into a buzzsaw and still found a way to scrap one win out of this. And It was looking bleak. It was looking very bleak for a while. Um, Andrew had kind of conceded his season. He had given up hope around 4 or 5 p.m. I don't blame him because it was looking bad. At that point, it looked like he was going to go 0-2. It looked like Colin might go 2-0, and then things completely swung. The amount of just twists and turns that happened um, in the back half of the day Sunday, pretty remarkable. And really, there was a point where it looked like it was going to be Colin who would be maybe even 14-12 and Andrew 12-14. And you end up with like a 3-game swing in the standings. You could also look at it and say, for Sam, imagine if Andrew had lost the second matchup. He would be 12-14 right now, holding the 6th seed. And Sam would only be 1 game back going into this week. So tons of things changed. I mean, playoff probabilities changing by the minute. And the big play, of course, was that absurd Josh Allen passing and receiving touchdown, something that has only happened a handful of times in NFL history. Throws a ball to Amari Cooper, who then laterals it back to Allen, and he then dives into the end zone. And so that does, by rule, count as a passing and receiving touchdown for Allen. Um, like a 10.5 point play for him. And that was just a huge deal, obviously. James Cook had a 60-yard touchdown run. That was a big deal. I think Mark Andrews scored a touchdown. It was Likely who scored at the end of the game. Andrews scored earlier in the night, but Andrews scores again. How about him, by the way? He's now 6 of his last 8 weeks, 12.1 points or more, up to the tight end 5 on the season, a guy who was left for dead. Suddenly right back to what he used to be. It's incredible that his turnaround has been insane. Lad McConkey performed, and Andrew able to overcome a rough week from CeeDee Lamb. And, CeeDee clearly is not healthy at all. I don't really know what Dallas is doing, putting him out there. I think if they lose this week, I think there's a shot that he gets sit down. I really do. What are you doing if you're Dallas? Like, you're hanging. Technically, they're not eliminated, but their playoff lives are hanging on by a thread. And are you really going to risk Lamb in a season? What's the hope here? Let's say a miraculous thing happens and they do get in the playoffs, they're going to get bounced right away. This is a bad team. They're playing with their backup quarterback. I think I just think it's weird to have him out there when I don't even know if he's like 50% right now. He barely played at all in the second half of this past game. He was dropping passes left and right. That's so unlike him. He's not right. And I mean, you got to give him credit for putting himself out there, but at some point the team might have to step in because it just feels pointless. Nonetheless, Andrew able to overcome that, and really, you got to just those 2 Bills players, the backbone of his team, Allen and Cook, performing in the snow, and each of them with some big time highlight worthy plays to lead Andrew to the all important 1-1 week. Shifting focus now, what a tight matchup we had between Krieger and Horvath. Krieger 127.89 takes down Horvath 124.32. And the matchup MVP, and this one is also the weekly MVP, and that is Brock Bowers, 25.2 points. He's up to the tight end one now. A couple of monstrous games over the last 3 weeks. 2 times in the last 3 weeks, he's gone 10 plus catches for 125 plus yards and a touchdown. The guy is, I mean, really, as a rookie tight end with horrible offense around him, horrible quarterback play, to be performing like this, I mean, he has lived up to everything he was expected to be coming out of Georgia and more. And you could make a very real claim that he is already the best tight end in the NFL. I don't think that that is a ridiculous statement. Certainly, easily top five, but you could I think you could argue that he is the best. And that's a remarkable achievement. Terry McLaurin, he scored again. Jaden Daniels and him actually ended up scoring twice. That's right. Him and Jaden Daniels the last couple of weeks starting to get that connection going again. And that Washington offense has looked better as they now head into their bye week. McLaurin has just had a nice year, really 9 touchdowns. You know, the yardage has been sporadic, but the touchdowns have been there. And he's a good player. He's the number one target in a good offense, and he has had a very nice year. Josh Jacobs continues to roll. Kamara was good. You know, the only thing that was pretty iffy was Deebo Samuel again, and bad conditions, bad night for San Francisco. And I mean, at this point, it's just a terrible, terrible season for Deebo. I think if you're Krieger, your only hope here is that maybe you get a big play or two down the stretch, because it doesn't feel to me like the volume is ever going to come back, the elite volume he once had earlier in his career. I don't really see that. McCaffrey and Mason going down helps, because maybe you'll get some more designed run plays for Samuel, but he hasn't been effective in those this year. In fact, he's averaging under 3 yards per carry. But yeah, maybe you could get another big play or two out of him. He has had a couple of those this year. It's really the only thing he's done. He has been a colossal bust for fantasy purposes, which sucks because obviously I'm a big fan. Krieger, just keeps on rolling, really. Pretty much ever since him and I made the trade, his team's just been really consistently solid in the top 6 of scoring almost every week. I think it's probably like 9 of the last 10 weeks he's been in the top 6 of scoring. You don't get a bunch of like crazy boom weeks from this team, but just a very high floor, and kind of establishing himself as maybe the 3rd best team in the league, if not the 3rd best, definitely the 4th. So Krieger's got a real shot at this thing at this point. And if he can earn the second bye, gives himself an even better chance. Horvath loses here, but again, just like in the previous matchup, yeah, Horvath lost, but team performed. Mahomes was fine. You get Jonathan Taylor back in the end zone, finally. David Njoku did everything he could to try to steal this matchup for Horvath. Ridiculous night. 9 catches, 2 touchdowns, 17 targets. 17 targets. He had a couple of drops and there were a couple times Jameis missed him. If just a couple of those connected, 9 catches on 17 targets, you just connect like three more times, two or three more times, going to win this matchup. And Jameis did throw it. He was looking for Njoku in the end zone at the very end of the game, and it was intercepted, unfortunately. But that in garbage time almost swung the matchup. DJ Moore scored, I believe, right? Yep. DJ Moore scored. It was just a really good week. It's funny, Jahmyr Gibbs kind of let the team down. He scored 7.5 points under his season average. He only had 11 touches for whatever reason. It was a big game for Montgomery. Montgomery doubled Gibbs in touches. Might just kind of it might have been, the fact it was a short week. They wanted to go with the more physical Montgomery and save Gibbs. It might have been a matter of that. Gibbs also had a fumble. I don't really know that he was punished for that. Didn't feel that way, but maybe that factors into things a little bit, especially when you're in the red zone. You want to go with Montgomery, I guess, but yeah, that's kind of a shame for Dave when you look at I only needed 3.5, 4 more points, and Gibbs was 7.5 under his season average. But nonetheless, to come away with a 1-1 week, and Horvath's team has been pretty good here of late, I believe. I could back that up with hashtag stats. Let's see. Come on. Yeah, I mean, 111 last week, 124 in this week, 104 the week before. So this team's trending upward after it had that absurd stretch 129 in week 8. Horvath had that ridiculous fucking nonsense where he was scoring sub 100 basically every week. He had done it 6 out of 7 weeks between weeks 4 and 10. Uh, that has ended, and this team it's starting to come together. Obviously, it's too late, but you'll always take good performances. Horvath now 9-17, and he is eliminated from playoff contention. Next matchup that we move to, Larar 135.19 taking down Mecca 99.93, and the matchup MVP is Najee Harris 21.9. He had to step in for the injured J.K. Dobbins, and he delivered. 16 for 75 and 1 on the ground, 6 for 54 receiving. Harris has had a nice year. He's been a quality running back too, and Larar is really going to need him down the stretch. He is really going to need him. Joe Mixon, great again. That's the stud of this team. T. Higgins, great every time he plays. T. Higgins, in his last 5 full games played, he's averaging, I'm doing just quick math in my head here. Looks like he's averaging about 17 points, something like that, in his last 5 full games played. I mean, really, the whole thing with him is when he's on the field, he's about as good as it gets. The problem is he misses a ton of time, and he misses a ton of like random and unexpected time. 18.58, I undersold him a little bit. 18.58 over his last 5. Other, Myers and Kelsey got the job done. You get fucking 30 points out of the Chargers defense and Cameron Dicker. I wish I could get that out of those 2 spots. I get 10 combined if I'm lucky. More on that later. Larar made one of the most random moves of the season, going for Matt Stafford and putting 25 fab on him. Didn't really pay off. 17.45. Did outscore Aaron Rodgers, which certainly is not saying much, but hey, there's that. And Larar did this all with Christian McCaffrey going down in the first half and sadly going down for the season. Uh, the nightmare season that McCaffrey had has ended, and we're going to look back on it and say he played 4 games. He didn't score a touchdown. He averaged about 10 points, 10.1, and that's that. And to me, the fact that Larar did not bid on Isaac Guerendo is just terrible. Um, especially when last week he did bid. Like I just said, he did participate in waivers last week to get Matt Stafford, and he had the fab to outbid everybody for Guerendo, and he just didn't do it. And now this team to me is I had been saying I thought this was a team capable of winning the league. It's going to be tough now. Um, you still have Mixon and Najee Harris. That's good. Higgins, Jacoby Myers, Keenan Allen. Like, Larar can still field a pretty decent starting lineup, but getting Guerendo would have been huge because I think realistically he's going to replace what McCaffrey was doing because McCaffrey hasn't been doing all that much. I think he'll replace what McCaffrey was doing with upside for more, and it would just give you that option. Instead, Larar is kind of backed into a team now, and it's one that, with the weak spot at quarterback, I just think it's going to be really hard to win 3 straight matchups in the playoffs. Winning one, sure, but to pull off 3 straight good weeks, I don't know that that's possible now with the team that remains. Larar, we got to say he really got fucked by injuries this year. McCaffrey, Dobbins, Diggs. Now, part of that is you invested in injury prone guys like McCaffrey and Dobbins. The Diggs, that's just unlucky, but yeah, I mean no one really has dealt with more severe injuries than this team, and Larar he's in the playoffs, so let's give him credit for that. I want to end on that note. Hey, his spot in this league was put into question, and while he hasn't always been there this year, he did produce, a playoff caliber team and one that at full strength was as good as any in the league. And that needs to be said and remembered when we assess the year that Larar had. Mecca ends up on the losing end here, and pretty brutal for him the last couple of weeks, with his playoff life on the line, to go 0-4 after he had made such a push to get back into contention. To fall short of 100 points the last 2 weeks is just tough to accept. Anthony Richardson, Chase Brown, Brian Thomas, Marvin Harrison, they did their job. Nobody else did. And kind of like what I was saying with Horvath with Jahmyr Gibbs, you look at this if you're Mecca and you say, I got 9.8 out of Amon-Ra. Like that's 5 points under his season average. I got 1.2 out of George Kittle. That's 12.5 under his season average. Now, part of that, of course, was due to the conditions in Buffalo and Brock Purdy being limited by that as well as his shoulder injury. That's just kind of unlucky when you look at that for Mecca, because the weather forecast going into that game was there was some crazy lake effect snow in western New York, like Saturday into early Sunday. But it was supposed to be done by game time, and it had stopped for a couple of hours before kickoff. But then, right as that game started, seriously, right as it started, a different band formed and didn't let up all night. So, um, that's kind of the fickle nature of weather up there. It could change by the minute. Lake effect is so weird, and you could go 5 to 10 miles away from Bill's Stadium, and it was something that Tarico and Collinsworth were talking about. They said, like, we stayed in downtown Buffalo, a few miles from the stadium. We didn't get anything. There was no snow there. Again, that's just the way that snow works up in that area, and you couldn't really prepare for it. You had to start Kittle, and it ended up being a shame because if you get your typical 15 or so points out of him, Mecca lost the second matchup by 16 to Nothdurft. If you had just gotten average production out of St. Brown and Kittle, you end up right there. Isaiah Pacheco didn't do much in his first game back. I thought it was encouraging that he played as many snaps as he did. And he looked pretty good. He had one really long run of about probably 25 to 30 yards. I mean, he looked pretty good to me. Very interested to see what happens with him rest of season. Kareem Hunt was the guy who was in there for goal line situations. Samaje Perine was in on like third down passing situations. So if they keep it that way, it's really going to hurt Pacheco's fantasy value. But if he starts, going back to the role he had those first 2 weeks where he was kind of the guy, if he slowly starts to reclaim that over the next couple of weeks, he could be legit during the fantasy playoffs. But yeah, I think for Mecca, you just look at it and you say, what could have been? And his back is really up against the wall now. Again, his path to a playoff spot is realistically going 2-0, and hoping Andrew goes 1-1 at best, and potentially out. Mecca's most realistic path is going 2-0 and Andrew going 0-2. That's kind of the reality of it. There are other ways for it to happen, but that's the easiest way, and that is not impossible. So there is a chance of that. We'll move to another one. Nothdurft 115.93 takes down Lorran 95.76, matchup MVP, and just so ridiculous. So much of this in garbage time. Lamar Jackson 27.75. I mean, just some obnoxious shit. And the reason I'm so fed up is because it cost me a second matchup win. What did he have? A fucking 50-yard run on that last possession? They're down by like 11 points with a minute and a half. And I kind of, I was looking at like Nothdurft's projection most of the day. It was like pretty bad. And then I look up and I see, oh, there goes Lamar Jackson just streaking down the field in garbage time. I got to look up exactly how long it was because I really think it was about a 50-yard run. And not only that, you end up getting a touchdown pass with under 10 seconds to go. Uh, Again, just outrageous shit. And I am very bitter about it because it certainly could cost me the second bye. Let's see here. It was a 40-yard run. And Jackson also had 31 yards passing. So that's four, 1.5. He had 9.5 points on the final possession, the final minute of the game. They got the ball with 1:03 on the clock, down by 12. And Jackson proceeds to score 9.5 fucking points. Garbage. Complete garbage. Kyren Williams and Saquon Barkley both had quality games. Both scored. And you know what? At this point, that kind of trio is that's the that's the lifeblood of Nothdurft's squad. Jackson, Williams, Barkley. Pickens has been really good too. He deserves to be like he's not quite with those guys, but he is a very key piece as well. And all of them performed. All of them got the job done in this matchup. The thing for Nothdurft, and his team continues to produce. However, he's not lighting it up the way he once did. And you look at under 116 3 of the last 4 weeks. That wasn't happening early in the year. 5 of the first 6 weeks, Nothdurft scored 130 plus. 5 of the first 6, 130 plus. He's done that twice since. And I think that really you look at Garrett Wilson has been a huge disappointment, and I blame it almost entirely on Aaron Rodgers. He hasn't done anything since week 9. Cade Otton is falling off. He hasn't done anything since week 9. He has 13.5 points over his last 3 games combined. The flex spot has not been able to be figured out. That was the one thing I think Nothdurft would do the Saquon Barkley trade again if he could, because Barkley is just an incredible stud. But, you did relinquish quite a bit to get him in losing Montgomery, Stevenson, Sutton, Hawkinson. Sutton would be an incredible flex to have right now. Montgomery obviously is not Barkley, but he's been very productive. Nothdurft's team has some elite options, but I really think, needs somebody to step up down the stretch for him to win it all. I really do think that. Garrett Wilson can be that guy. That feels like the X factor because we know he's an incredible player and we've seen him do it at times this year. He has 3 games over 20 points. Can you get that version of him when you need it most? I think about my team 2 years ago. And the thing that changed everything for me in the fantasy playoffs was DJ Moore coming to life at the right time. DJ Moore had been such a disappointment for the majority of the year. And then he delivered in the fantasy playoffs, and it took my team to another level. Can Garrett Wilson be that guy for Nothdurft? Or can he find a flex that scores a touchdown when he needs it? Nothdurft, we know, with him getting a bye, he only needs to win 2 matchups. Week 16, week 17. That's all he's playing for now. Can he put together 2 good weeks and finish off this season, a season in which he has been the top team from start to finish in the regular season? Something very rarely seen in this league. It's been a great year. I think the impressive thing about this team is that even when it's struggling like it is lately, it still scores 110 to 115. That's the floor seemingly. But can it get back to the ceiling that it once had? That's the question for me. Losing side is Lorran. Um, Caleb Williams was great, and then basically nobody else was. No one else scored over 12.8. The kind of a weird start sit decision. Lorran went with ETN over. I think I would have just kept riding with Jaden Reed. I know it's been disappointing. It's been a roller coaster, but ETN has just never been good. He hasn't given you anything all year. I wouldn't have started him. I would have had Pollard in at running back. I would have had Reed at flex. Wouldn't have changed things, but yeah, ETN is you couldn't pay me to start him with what he's done and how bad that offense is. Kyle Pitts gets blanked. He's been horrendous lately. Middle of the year, he had that nice stretch. How about three of the last four games, 1.6 or less? I think the guy just sucks. I really do. Sad. Sad. And Kirk Cousins is not playing well of late either. Yeah, tough week for Lohan, especially after the strong start with Caleb Williams. AJ Brown didn't have a big game. God, he could have too, but they didn't throw it that much. He ends up only with 6 targets. That was a pristine matchup against the horrible Ravens secondary. If they needed to, he could have torched them. They just didn't need it, and they really haven't needed it. They've been a very run heavy team as they should be with Barkley and Hurts. So yeah, Lohan drops to 7-19. Um, two more matchups, right? Yeah. We'll go to mine. I beat Dylan 113.1 to 100.71. Matchup MVP is Jaden Daniels, 29.7. He's over 60 points combined the last 2 weeks after the sky was falling on him. And we'll see how he does down the stretch. He had a couple of really easy matchups here, Dallas and Tennessee at home. Let's see what happens when he has to, you got to go on the road to New Orleans out of the bye and then Philadelphia at home. Those are some tougher situations to perform. We'll see how he does in those. Bijan Robinson was really good again. Basically has been, as good as anyone over the last 2 months. Him and Barkley. Jamar Chase scored. Nico Collins he didn't score, but he was really good. He looks fully recovered from his hamstring issue. How about Trey McBride? Focus on him for a minute. 24 receptions over the last 2 weeks. Over 200 yards. The only thing is he still does not have the receiving touchdown. It's insane for a guy with 73 catches to not have a receiving touchdown. Josh Allen now, the funny thing to be able to say, Josh Allen, who has 0 receptions on the season because a lateral is not a reception, Josh Allen has more receiving touchdowns than Trey McBride this year. But he's as good as it gets at the position. Him, Bowers, Kittle. But some spots really let me down. Chuba Hubbard did nothing. They just didn't really run the ball. I don't know why. I don't know why. Bryce Young, I'll tell you what, he's playing great. And he was dealing, but it was strange to me that they had a pass to run ratio of like 45 to 20. That's strange. Cooper Kupp, it was not his day. The very little of that game I saw, it felt like I just saw Kupp blocking. He was essentially, and he's been very good at that in his career. But like that was his entire role in this game. He was blocking for Nakua and Demarcus Robinson. Crazy. I mean, I was in great shape. This is why I'm so just disgusted by this. All day it was looking amazing for me, and then the sky kind of, the roof caved in, and I end up losing the second matchup. Buccaneers defense sucked. I get 6.3 points out of those two fucking spots combined. Zane Gonzalez, fuck him. Misses two field goals. If he had made either of them, I win the second matchup. Bum. Every kicker I pick up, awful. I picked up Brandon McManus. Prepare for him to go like 1 for 3 on Thursday night. Just it doesn't matter what I do. If I pick up a good kicker, they get one field goal attempt. If I pick up a bum, they get 3 field goal attempts, but they miss all of them. Doesn't matter what I do. I can't get it right. I can't get that spot right. I've never been able to. It's fucking ridiculous. And it's important. You can't, it's very hard to survive getting like under 10 points combined out of these two spots. I've started defenses against Carolina 3 times this year, and I'm fully committed to my rant now. So just bear with it. Or you could fast forward so you don't have to listen to me cry. But I have started a defense against Carolina 3 times this year. I have gotten a combined -points. How? How is that possible? I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I dropped the Bills defense. I was holding them thinking maybe I'll start them if the snow is going to be an issue. But then it wasn't supposed to be an issue, but then it was. And if I had started the Bills, would have been enough. Just can't get it right. Can't get it right. Annoying. Very annoying. I got to start Jonnu Smith moving forward. Ride that. Ride that as long as it goes. Guy has 22 targets over the last 2 weeks. I'm starting him this week. Can I please get production out of the DST and K spots? Please. I'm not asking for much. I'm asking for 15 combined. That's it. Please. For my sanity. I moved to 16 and 10. I'm still holding the bye, but just feels like it feels like a repeat of last year where I was holding the bye for like the entire year, and then I lost it in the final week, and then I lost in the first round of the playoffs. I'm scarred from that, and I feel like it's going to happen again. I feel like I'm going to blow the bye, and I feel like I'm going to lose in week 15. We'll see. The power of positive energy is, I wish I could have it right now, but I don't. Dylan loses. Basically, it was just like a team-wide effort of mediocrity. No one tops 15.1 points. Only one scored below 8. Everyone was just fine. No one went off. Justin Herbert, that's really what kind of screwed Dylan in the matchup was you get 9.45 out of your quarterback. That can't happen. And TJ Hawkinson has alternated awful and good games. Awful, good, awful, good, awful. So he should be good this week. He also has yet to score since coming back, which is a little bit strange. Doing his best Trey McBride impersonation. Speaking of scoring, Devonte Adams did this week, and Devonte Adams is a big reason why Garrett Wilson has not been good. Um, Adams has double-digit targets in 3 of the last 4 weeks. Rodgers, that's his guy, and he's feeding him, and he feeds him down in the red zone, and so it makes it hard for Wilson. Wilson basically has to make a great play, and some weeks he does, but when he doesn't, it ends up ugly. Cortland Sutton continues to be great, as does Puka Nacua. Stud. Yeah, I mean, really, it just like I said, it comes down for Dylan. It comes down to you didn't get quarterback production. Let's say you get 13 more points out of that spot, you win the matchup, and that's really not asking for that much because you're basically at that point just asking for Herbert to hit his projection, but it didn't happen, and Dylan is 9-17. Final matchup: Peter 103.24 defeats Colin 95.96. The matchup MVP Bucky Irving, who has been on a roll. 26 points out of Buck. Um, yeah, he's got over 50 combined the last two. 16.2 in week 10. It's just been great. Really, since week 6, he has been great. Been a running back one. And one of the best ads of the season. And the rest of Peter's team really kind of let him down, except for Chase McLaughlin, who had 15. Should have added him back on October 3rd. The rest of the team was kind of disappointing. Hurts was under 20. Derrick Henry continuing. I really don't want to call it disappointing, but with what he was doing earlier in the year, to be at 14.2 or less in 5 of his last 6 games, it is a little bit disappointing. Um, Back-to-back games without getting into the end zone. Hopefully the bye week benefits him. Obviously, it makes sense for a player at his age with the volume he's been receiving to be, feeling it a little bit at this time of the year. You get the bye week and you come out of the bye week to facing the Giants. That sounds pretty good to me. I think that could definitely be a get-right game where Henry kind of shows some of that early season fantasy dominance. Justin Jefferson, for whatever reason, just cannot buy a touchdown, and it has crushed his ceiling. Very high floor. He's been a very solid wide receiver one, but he only has one game above 20 points this year. And really, it comes down to a lack of touchdowns. Hasn't found the end zone since week 7. If you're Peter, you'll be hoping for that to change during the most important stretch of the year. I think that's what Peter has to look forward to, honestly, is he's kind of been getting by with his studs mildly underperforming. Like, again, they're not killing you. But when you look at Hurts, Henry, Jefferson, I think you're kind of thinking, I expect to get, I don't know, 25. I expect to get about 60 points out of those 3 guys combined most weeks. And when they're instead giving you like 45, yeah, that doesn't feel so great. And it ends up, it's the difference between scoring 105 versus 120. It's a legitimate drop off. DK Metcalf, I don't know what's going on there. Obviously, he's dealing with some injury, but you also have Jackson Smith and Jigba kind of becoming the better receiver on that team. And Metcalf, too. Touchdowns, he has three on the year. So you're not getting them out of him. Uh, Will Disley, what a shame. He was on a great roll and ends up no receptions. Peter's got a solid team, but he needs his studs to score touchdowns. Really, that's he needs those guys to start delivering in that way to stack up with the elite teams in the league. I think it's as simple as that. Peter is still alive to get the bye. Probably has to go 2-0, get some help for it to work out that way. Colin, I mean, just brutal, brutal. Because yeah, like I said before, it was looking good for a while for this team. It's looking like he's going to go 2-0. He's going to be 14-12. He's going to be holding this. I had really thought Colin's going to be holding the 6th seed going into the last week. And he's getting Larar. At the time, Larar hadn't lost McCaffrey for the season yet, but Mixon I knew was on bye. Thought, damn, like Colin's starting to be in the driver's seat to have the final playoff spot, and then it just all fell to hell. And really, what it comes down to is his two, his two top running backs, Brees Hall, Ken Walker. You get 11 and a half out of them combined. That can't happen. And then the quarterback thing, just not a good start. 3.1 out of Brock Purdy. Again, nobody knew the weather was going to be as bad as it was. But even so, you've got a banged up Purdy playing a good Bills defense on the road. And best case scenario, you knew it was going to be cold and shit. Like, a situation that Purdy hasn't really played in at the NFL level very much. And so to me, I think it's absurd that ESPN projected him for 22.1. That's insane. And I could never have seen starting him this week. Certainly the worst sit of the week is Jordan Love, who scored 21.7 on the bench. That ends up being the difference. Colin starts Love. He goes 1-1. He'd be tied with Andrew right now. Yeah, would have fallen a little bit short in the second matchup, but to go 1-1 would have been significant. And yeah, Purdy is just not a guy I would have gone with this week. I don't know if you could start him the rest of the season unless he somehow proves himself to be healthy. But the big thing for Colin is that he's the one who won the Isaac Guerendo sweepstakes. He dropped 50 fab. Good for you. You had it to spend. You get a good, a chance at a very valuable asset this late in the year. Leave it all out on the line, and that could end up being a big piece. Especially, Colin has Brian Robinson on bye this week. So he was in need of a flex option. Guerendo could be a big add. He's going to have to go 2-0. He's going to need Andrew to go 0-2. And needs Mecca probably to go 1-1 at best as well, but it could happen. Crazier things have certainly happened. So Colin he's alive, and I still like this team, but this certainly was kind of a devastating a devastating blow to his playoff hopes, the way things played out on Sunday night with Purdy. As far as the rest of this, already touched on that one noteworthy fab situation with Larar. So let's just go into the power rankings. Nothdurft and I stay 1 and 2. Krieger jumps 2 spots from 5 to 3, with Peter dropping from third to fourth and Larar dropping from fourth to fifth. Larar didn't drop because of team performance this week. He simply dropped because he's just lost so damn much to injury between Dobbins and McCaffrey these last couple of weeks. It's tough. It's tough, the situation he's in now. Andrew and Mecca switch spots. So Andrew 6, Mecca 7 now. And Sam leaps from 10th to 8th, with Colin dropping back a slot from 8 to 9. Horvath jumps up from 11 to 10, and it's Dylan who falls from 9 to 11. Lorran standing pat at 12. Very quick look at the overall playoff picture. Currently, it's Nothdurft 1, me 2. Krieger versus Andrew would be a playoff matchup if things ended right now. Larar versus Peter would be the other first round matchup. And remember, everybody, seeding is not done by division. Every division gets a team in the playoffs, but it doesn't guarantee you any seeding. So you could win a division and end up as the 6th seed, for example. You could be second in your division and end up as the 2 seed. That happened last year, and it might happen again this year. So those are important things to keep in mind. And also a reminder, the team that comes in last place, we don't have the punishment anymore, but we did vote on what is going to happen in its place. And what we decided on is that it's a $100 payment that goes to the league champion. So that's it. Oh, you know what? That is incorrect. That is incorrect. The last place team will pay the league champion $50 at the end of the season. So half of the buy-in. I apologize for my incorrect statement. If you were confused, I don't blame you, because fucking I didn't even know. But yeah, that's what we decided on, was $50, half of the league buy-in, last place team paying the league champion at the end of the year, just for the teams that end up not making the playoffs to know that as the case. Quickly look at the matchups for this week and then get the hell out of here. I think the biggest matchup of the week is probably, it's kind of hard to pick. I guess you just go with Andrew versus Dylan, simply because Andrew knows if he wins that, he's probably going to make the playoffs. And if he loses it, it's pretty much a toss-up. So quite a bit hinges on that matchup alone, and you just know that Dylan wants nothing more than to win and knock him out. Got a really big one between Nothdurft and Krieger, simply because Krieger still has a shot at the bye. And that also means that my matchup with Sam, very important. I'm competing for that bye, and Sam is trying to find a way into the playoffs. So, both teams have something to play for in that one. Other matchups where both teams have something to play for: Peter and Mecca. Peter's still barely alive for a bye. Mecca has a shot at the playoffs, and then Larar and Colin is the same exact situation. with Larar trying to sneak his way to the number 2 seed and Colin trying to steal away the 6. And then we have one matchup with two teams that are eliminated, Horvath versus Lorran. However, there is still something to play for there in the sense that, Horvath, you want to avoid that last place bracket bye. And him and Dylan are still kind of going at it for that. And hell, Lorran, there is a world where if his team goes crazy this week, there is a world where he could end up ahead of both Horvath and Dylan. He would need to beat Horvath by about 50, go 2-0, and then have Horvath and Dylan go 0-2. But it's at least possible. And for Horvath, it's certainly more important to try to win and avoid that situation. But that's gonna wrap it up here. Last week, the regular season, pretty amazing. Quite a bit at stake for mainly Andrew because he is in the driver's seat to get the last playoff spot, and we know he really wants it. So see if he gets it done. See if he gets the job done. Good luck to everybody, and the playoffs are nearly upon us. Goodbye.